Honda is famous for making some of the best back-to-basics driver's cars that the world has ever seen. Their hot hatches set the bar for front-wheel drive vehicles everywhere. And you know what Honda did? They stopped making them. And the new, mostly boring Honda has left the door wide open for somebody to come in and take that front-wheel drive crown. And it turns out Honda's biggest threat was a company that nobody was expecting. So let's dig into Honda's rise and fall in the sports car scene and see why Hyundai is poised to become what Honda used to be. I'm Guff, this is Albon, let's get started. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. The 1980s. Before Hyundai was even a brand worth talking about, Honda was showing the world that it was the foremost name in front-wheel drive. Cars like the Civic Si and Prelude Si were proof positive that you didn't need big power or rear drive to have fun in a car. These little front drivers were lightweight, nimble, with slick gearboxes and impressively sharp driving dynamics. You could wind these little four cylinders out to the moon, and they would keep goading you into driving harder and harder. People loved these little cars, and Honda knew it. And so they began pouring more time and money into R&D for these fun little runabouts. They made the CRX SI, they made the Integra RSI and later the GSR, and then they said screw it and went all out in 1989 and created one of the most legendary JDM cars of all time, the Honda NSX. This was neither small nor front-wheel drive. It was a mid-engined, rear-wheel drive JDM supercar, one that took the nimbleness and excitement of Honda's front-wheel drive lineup and translated it to a world-beating aluminum monocoque and mid-mounted V6 engine. Now, going from souped-up eco cars to a mid-engine supercar sounds like a big jump, but the one thing that I had forgot to mention was that Honda had been dominating Formula One for years. Honda had been racing in F1 since the 60s, but it was in the 1980s that Honda truly found their peak in Formula One. Honda won 6 back-to-back Constructors' Championships and 5 Drivers' Championships, with drivers like Nelson Piquet, Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna at the helm of their race cars. And if you didn't know how far ahead of the curve Honda was, get this. In 1988, the McLaren Honda F1 cars driven by Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna won 15 out of the 16 races. And at the end of the season, they won the Constructors' Championship with 3 times as many points as the second place team. And you know who that second place team was? Ferrari. Honda was truly at the top of their game, so it made sense that their production cars were the best in the business. They had the most cutting-edge racing technology trickling down from their formula cars into the chassis, engine, and suspension systems of cars like the Civic, Integra, and of course, the NSX. And there was no better example of this than the cars that received Honda's most prestigious title, Type R. The first Type R was, of course, the NSX-R, and that car was made because Honda engineers knew the regular NSX was a compromise. A compromise between performance and daily drivability. The same compromise that ruins so many sports cars in this day and age. And so Honda said, screw compromise. Let's go Type R. The NSX-R was lighter, stiffer, no AC, no traction control, no distractions. And it gave people an opportunity to own the car they saw only on television, racing in touring car championships and battling it out at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But the racing DNA didn't stop at the NSX. Honda later released the Integra Type R, often considered one of the greatest front-wheel drive cars ever made. It had a 1.8-liter engine that VTEC'd its way to 197 horsepower at nearly 9,000 RPM. The engine was hand-built with hand-ported and polished heads, and the chassis was stiffened, suspension upgraded, hell, they even made the windshield thinner to save weight. It was truly the best an Integra could ever be. And so, Honda did it again with the Accord Type R, and then they did it again with the Civic Type R. Honda truly couldn't be stopped by anyone. Well, except for themselves. Well, that are some hackers. Speaking of which, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. VPNs, or virtual private networks, hide your data and protect your identity online. Governments, marketers, and internet service providers are constantly collecting our browser history, messages, and personal data, and then selling it off to the lowest bidder. NordVPN lets you encrypt your network traffic and stop any sketchy charlatans from stealing your data. If you're at your local Cars and Coffee, NordVPN lets you safely and securely connect to public Wi-Fi network without fear of hackers intercepting your data and stealing the 400 pictures you took of your slammed 350Z. Not to mention the fact that NordVPN lets you access region block content from all over the world. I've been using it to watch stuff like Rick and Morty and Baby Driver on Netflix, my favorite movie by the way. NordVPN has over 5,200 servers in 60 countries, all with amazing speed, so you'll be protected in one click and you'll never notice a difference while browsing. If you go to nordvpn.com/Albon, you can get 73% off a 2-year plan, plus 1 extra month for free. That's just $3.16 a month for a fully protected internet experience. So go to nordvpn.com/Albon or hit the link in the description. Now, back to how Honda screwed themselves over. By the late 90s, Honda was undergoing some changes. They had shut down the Formula One team in 1992, and models like the NSX, Integra, and Prelude were just not as profitable as they used to be, especially the high-performance variants. Their main rival, Toyota, was already gutting their sports car lineup in favor of volume sellers like the Corolla or Camry, and they were shifting R&D money to new segments like SUVs, which had just started to gain traction. Honda executives very clearly saw this slipping market share, and they needed to reel their engineers back in. And so began the dissolution of Honda's greatest models. The DC2 Integra was replaced in 01 with the larger and more practical DC5. The Prelude was flat out killed in that same year, largely because it was too big to be considered a small car by Japanese regulations, and because it was just too similar to other cars in Honda's lineup. Now, it wasn't all bad. Honda brought us the S2000 in 1999, proof that the engineers still had some sway in the company. But even still, as corporate executives began to take more and more control back over the years, Honda's global lineup began to shrink. The NSX was dropped in 2005, the DC5 Integra in 2006, and by 2009, even the venerable S2000 saw its final days. In the year 2010, the only fun Hondas you could buy in the US were a Civic Si or a CR-Z, which was a hybrid. And you know what? Honda was more profitable than ever. But at what cost? Honda's R&D president, Yoshiyuki Matsumoto, was quoted as saying, "We obsessed about Toyota and beating it in the marketplace. We started to look like Toyota. We started to forget why we existed as a company to begin with." Honda's revenue may have been up, but their quality had slipped over the years, with Honda going from 7th to 20th place in JD Power's 2017 quality study. And beyond that, they started to lose their magic, their charm. They used to be the underdog, the people's car maker, one that went against all odds and dominated it on the racetrack, and then took the glory of those race wins and brought them down to us, the regular people, buyers of Preludes and Integras. But now they were just another car maker, making boring silver and black boxes on wheels, occasionally showing us a glimmer of hope with cars like the Civic Si, or from afar, the FK2 Civic Type R, which was only available in Europe and Japan. In 2017 though, Honda turned a corner with the FK8 Civic Type R. This was a reimagining of the Civic Type R, and this time it was global. It was powered by the 316 horsepower turbocharged K20 C1, and it had all sorts of suspension trickery to get that power down to the front wheels. It was fast, and more importantly, it was fun. And even though it looked kind of ridiculous, it was an important reminder that under Honda's corporate suit lied the heart of true gearheads and engineers. And then just a few months ago, they teased a new Integra, and it really seemed like Honda was on the mend. This was the Honda of old, rising again and bringing glory back to front-wheel drive cars. Nah, I'm just kidding. The Integra ended up being a pure marketing exercise. It was not a nimble, two-door sports car designed to transport us back to our youth. It's an Acura ILX, a fat, ugly, four-door Civic with a nose job, and it is truly a travesty. Add to that the fact that Honda, a mainstay of Formula One, is leaving at the end of this season, thus severing their biggest connection they ever had to motorsports. So then, Honda's bean counters still run the show in Tokyo, and the Honda that used to be is gone, thus leaving a power vacuum in the space of affordable, fun, front-wheel drive runabouts. And although nobody in Japan seems to want to fill that space, just 600 miles west in South Korea is somebody who does. Hyundai not Hyundai or Hyundai, is a household name when it comes to cars in 2021. They make an absolutely massive range of automobiles, from economy cars to electric cars, SUVs, luxury cars, and even hot hatches. And Hyundai, along with their sister brand Kia, rank higher in J.D. Power's most recent quality study than Honda, Toyota, or even Lexus. But it wasn't always this way. Hyundai Engineering and Construction Company was founded in 1947, but it wasn't until 1967 that they got into cars. But back then, they didn't even make their own cars. Hyundai partnered with Ford to manufacture the Ford Cortina, and that was a great starting point, but this little ragtag Korean car maker always had bigger plans for itself. And in 1974, they began poaching top execs and engineers from British Leyland to help them make their very first car. That car was the Hyundai Pony. And it was a small 5-door hatchback with a Mitsubishi 4G engine powering the rear wheels. And boy, was it mediocre. To its credit, it wasn't designed to be anything special. And while it was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, this was a small, cheap hatchback, designed for export to countries like Chile, Argentina, Ecuador, and Egypt. Something that was tough and rugged, but also cheap and easy to maintain. And the Pony did just that. Well enough, in fact, that they began exporting the car to Europe and Canada in 1984. At one point, it was even the best-selling car in Canada. But it wouldn't be until 1986 that Hyundai would start selling cars in the United States. First with the tiny XL hatchback, which was just a reskinned Mitsubishi Mirage. And then later the mid-size Sonata sedan. And of course, we can't forget about the Hyundai Scoop. This was their first sports car, and it was kind of cool. First of all, the name, Scoop. Hyundai made it and they saw it was a sporty coupe, and so they called it the Scoop. And while the base 81 horsepower front-wheel drive model was kind of whack, it later came in a turbo trim, and it had an aluminum head, titanium connecting rods, and a Garrett turbo, making 113 horsepower. Alright, it wasn't groundbreaking, but it was the most interesting car in Hyundai's lineup. And all of the cars in the lineup did alright. They were extremely affordable, cheap to run cars that looked good, and so they sold well in the US. But Hyundai's bargain bin nature was one that was becoming all too integral to its brand image. In the US, most people saw Hyundai as a brand that you bought if you were struggling or stingy. And Hyundai was well aware of this, so they started to put in efforts to lift their brand image and bring their products more in line with the world-class car makers they were competing against, like Toyota and Honda. And so they began to focus less on brand-engineered cars like the XL and put their time into developing new standalone Hyundai products. They also developed their own engine instead of borrowing old Mitsubishi ones. And they began expanding manufacturing out of South Korea and into places like India to cater to the growing Asia and Middle Eastern markets. And they made a legitimate front-wheel drive sports car with the Hyundai Tiburon. This was the successor to the gangbustin' Hyundai Scoop, and it came with a 140 horsepower, 2-liter 4-cylinder engine powering the front wheels in its top trim. And in Europe, it even came in an F2 or F2 Evo special edition to commemorate Hyundai's participation in the World Rally Championship. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention? Hyundai went rallying. Yes, the rite of passage of some of the best manufacturers in the world, WRC, and Hyundai was in it. They raced in F2 using a Hyundai kit car instead of one of their production cars, and they weren't really very good. But hey, it was something. In 1999, they took it up a notch and developed the Accent WRC and raced it in the 2000 World Rally season. Their lead driver, Alistair McRae, was the younger brother of the world-famous Subaru savant, Colin McRae. And that year, with the younger McRae at the wheel, they got their first top 10 result at the Rally Argentina. And sure, they didn't do great, with only one 4th place finish in the 2001 season, but the very next year in 2002, they got 4th place overall in the Manufacturers' Championship. Then they had budget cuts and withdrew from Rally totally in 2003. But hey, it was something, and it foreshadowed the success that they would see on the dirt stages in years to come. Anyways, racing aside, one of the biggest things they did in this period was invest heavily into research, design, and manufacturing, all in the name of one thing: quality. They wanted their cars to be able to hang with the big boys, the indestructible front-wheel drive tanks like the Civic and the Camry. And so through the late 90s and early 2000s, they spent millions of dollars improving and iterating on their cars. And by 2004, Hyundai ranked second in J.D. Power's initial quality survey. And they were so sure of themselves, they began offering a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty for all cars sold in the US. This was huge, as most cars came with a 5-year warranty, and it was proof positive that Hyundai was not messing around when it came to the quality of their cars. But then, in 2006, Hyundai hit a roadblock that broke all of the momentum they had been building. The South Korean government suspected Chung Mung-koo, the CEO, of corruption, and in April, he was arrested for the embezzlement of over $100 million. This was a huge shakeup at Hyundai, and eventually led to the slowdown of this ambitious blitz they were doing of the car world. The next 8 years were a bit of a grind for Hyundai. They continued expanding manufacturing and R&D, and they continued selling more and more cars. And by 2011, they were selling over 4 million cars a year, making them the 4th largest automaker behind GM, Volkswagen, and Toyota. But their lineup was boring. Their only exciting car, the Tiburon, was discontinued in 2008. And it was replaced with a totally different kind of sports car, the Hyundai Genesis. This was not just a coupe, but also a sedan, and more of a luxury sports platform, designed to take on Nissan's G37 and 370Z. It was front-engined, rear-wheel drive, and in coupe form it came with a 2-liter turbo 4-popper that made 210 horsepower, or a 3.8-liter V6 that made 306 horsepower. And Hyundai went toe-to-toe with the 370Z in trims too, offering a base model, GT trim, track trim, and even an R-Spec trim, which was all of the go fast goodies, but none of the bloat. And by all accounts, the Genesis Coupe was an okay car. Edmunds called it the most interesting car that Hyundai makes, but most other publications said it was all around just worse than the Golf GTI, Scion FRS, Miata, or even the V6 Mustang. Even still, Hyundai was determined to show off the Gen Coupe's sports car chops, and so they partnered with Reese to race in Formula Drift, Pikes Peak, and Redline Time Attack. And with a Millen behind the wheel, it did damn well, setting a 2-wheel drive record on Pikes Peak in 2009 and again in 2011. And in 2014, it even won a US Touring Car Championship with the Go-Go Gear team. All in all though, the Genesis Coupe just wasn't what it needed to be. Sales peaked early in 2011 and just went down from there until it was discontinued. The only other sporty car that Hyundai sold was the Veloster, and that was more of a quirky 3-door hatchback designed for college kids rather than the racetrack. But all that was about to change. You see, Hyundai becoming the 4th biggest automaker in the world meant one thing. They had lots of moolah. And many of the Hyundai engineers and execs felt that they needed to bring back excitement to the company. And getting back into racing would be a good use of all of that spare cash they had laying around. And so, in 2012, Hyundai Motorsports GmbH was formed in Alzenau, Germany to redevelop and revamp their World Rally Championship program. The car they chose to race was the Hyundai i20, a subcompact hatchback that sold outside of the US. And in 2014, the i20 WRC was born. This was a 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-wheel drive monster that sent 300 angry horsepowers through a 6-speed sequential transmission. And with Thierry Neuville behind the wheel, they took 1 3rd place and 1 1st place finish in their debut season. Not a bad start for an all-new team. It wasn't just on the rally stages that Hyundai was making moves though. In 2014, Hyundai poached an industry giant, Albert Biermann, the former vice president of engineering at BMW M. His new position was lead engineer of chassis dynamics at Hyundai, and in 2015 he became a critical part of forming Hyundai's new secret sports car division. This new skunkworks opened up shop at Hyundai's new Namyang research facility, complete with their own private racetrack. And thanks to their close relationship with the Hyundai Motorsports rally team, they developed prototypes of all new Hyundai sports cars teeming with racing DNA. By 2017, they had a production car ready. But what they needed was a name. Hyundai wanted to prove to the world that they could make cars akin to Audi's RS, Volkswagen R, Mercedes AMG, and of course, BMW M. And so, in the honor of the birthplace of this new sports car, Namyang, they named their new performance division Hyundai N. And the first car to bear the new badge was the Hyundai i30N. This was the big brother to the i20 that was racing in WRC, and it was a hot hatch designed to take on any of its rivals from Europe or Japan. It had a 271 horsepower, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that could be had with a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. It was, like its main rivals, the Golf GTI and Civic Type R, front-wheel drive, but thanks to a trick electronic LSD, it put down its power extremely well. The steering was great, the brakes were confidence-inspiring, and overall the chassis felt as though there was some real thought put in it. No doubt proof of the handiwork of Albert Biermann and the entire Hyundai N team, and proof that racing in motorsports truly makes a difference in a car maker's production vehicles. And this was just the very first N car. The very next year, on the rally stage, Hyundai won the WRC Manufacturers Championship, and on the streets, they released the Veloster N. This was based off of the same PD platform as the i30N with a few minor tweaks, and this was the first N car to make it to the United States. And just like the i30, it was pretty dang good. A fantastic option for driving enthusiasts who wanted an alternative to a Civic or a Golf. And that's crazy to think about. After all these years of Hyundai being an automotive nobody, they were now being mentioned in the same breath as the finest that Honda could offer. But where Honda kept a tight leash on their Type R division, Hyundai was letting N run free. In 2020, Hyundai won the WRC manufacturer's title again. And that same year, they released the i20N. This time, it was just for Europe, and it was a lighter, nimbler version of the bigger brother i30. It rocked a 201 horsepower, 1.6-liter engine and a 6-speed manual trans, and went toe-to-toe with Toyota's rally car for the road, the GR Yaris. And then, in this year, 2021, Hyundai announced 2 new N models. The Elantra N, a 280 horsepower mid-size sedan with a 6-speed manual trans, eLSD, and even electronic dampers. And the Kona N, their first fast SUV, complete with all of the goodies of the Elantra N, along with a properly nutty looking wide body and wing. And beyond the dedicated N cars, Hyundai now has the N line on many of their production vehicles, which ranges from just cosmetic upgrades to full suspension overhauls in the case of the Elantra GT N line. It's safe to say that Hyundai is well and truly on top of their game. They have the right team, with new additions like Klaus Koster and Thomas Schimera from AMG and BMW respectively, helping push N even further. They have the racing background with continued success in World Rally and touring car programs with the Veloster and Elantra. And they have the drive. Few other manufacturers are taking risks like this in this day and age. Performance cars are being cut in favor of electric vehicles and volume sellers. But Hyundai continues to put their money where their mouth is. And not only has been expanding Hyundai N, but has one of the best lines of electric cars with Hyundai Ioniq. Hyundai N is at the precipice of becoming a truly great performance brand. And sure, the N cars aren't perfect. They aren't smashing Civic Type Rs or Golf Rs, and they aren't being called the best of all time, no. But this is simply the beginning. And year by year, as manufacturers like Honda continue gutting their sports car IP and severing ties to the motorsports that gave them their magic, Hyundai's N is getting closer and closer to what Honda used to be. I think, in my personal opinion, Hyundai is now what Honda used to be in the late 1980s. A scrappy underdog with laser focus on making the best cars they possibly can. And within just one decade, Honda went from that to creating some of the most universally loved sports cars, focused on drivers and the love of driving bred from motorsports. And Hyundai, if they play their cards right, very well might do the same. Thanks for watching, guys. YouTube says you'll like the video over here. I'll see you in the next one.